Today on Locked On Canadiens, we get the view from the other side. The wonderful Maude from Game Over Ottawa is joining us for a breakdown of the upcoming season.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Laura Saba, also known as The Active Stick, and today I'm not joined by my wonderful co-host Ian Boisvert. Unfortunately, he had to miss today's recording, but I have a special guest with me and we're going to get the other side of this rivalry. Maude Schoblocher of Game Over Ottawa is here. Maude, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. It's interesting because the teams are in totally different positions from last time I was on the show last preseason. Last year, both of them non-playoff teams, and Montreal with that surprising playoff berth this season, and the Sens finally making it back. It's interesting now to be talking about two potentially successful teams this time.
It's actually a lot of fun. And we did, my co-host Ian had this idea where we would start the episode by saying one nice thing about each other's teams. And I want to make it really clear that we love Game Over Ottawa and the hosts as much as we hate the actual Ottawa Senators. Like that is a massive compliment. But that's not the nice thing that I wanted to say. As my guest, do you want to start and say a nice thing? One nice thing. All you have to do is one nice thing.
Sure. I would say I'm probably pretty jealous of the Habs drafting, like specifically getting Lane Hudson where they did. I believe he was second round, right?
Yeah.
And Demidov, he probably, like, he slipped in the draft sort of, so he kind of fell into the Habs lap, but they made the right decision to take him and not let him fall any farther. Just these young, exciting players. And I'm always hearing about from my Habs mutuals like you guys that there's a lot of great guys coming up on Laval too, and Jacob Fowler, the goalie prospect, as well, coming up. So like when I compare the Habs to Ottawa, I'm like, oh, their prospect pool is really, that's the threat really, is because the Sens were a little bit better in the standings last year, but the Habs have more coming up in the pipeline than Ottawa. So I'm jealous of that.
I love that. I want to say that what I've been jealous of with Ottawa is, first of all, Jake Sanderson, right? Magnificent player. That's the kind of guy that I would love to add to this team, to the Montreal Canadiens. But also, I find that what they've done successfully in the last couple of off seasons or trade deadlines is get a guy that other people wanted, right? Like they were able to get Dylan Cousins, for example. They were able to get, I know it didn't work out, but like DeBrincat was a very shrewd move, right? So I feel like they've been really aggressive on the trade market, and they've gotten pieces that make sense. Like I am thinking of the times where they'll make a move, and we're going to talk about this in the second segment too, like the offseason changes they made, where Ottawa will make a move and like the general consensus will be like, I like that move for Ottawa. So I feel like they do that really well. But also Jake Sanderson, can we have him?
No, never.
All right. So we are going to do a quick kind of recap of how last season went, because I think both teams kind of didn't overachieve. The Montreal Canadiens definitely overachieved, and I think the Ottawa Senators like solidified is the way that I would put it. But I do kind of want to talk a little bit about last night's game, just because as a fan, I'm starting to get sick of these games. As a Habs fan, I love my team. I love watching my team. I'm getting sick of this kind of thing.
Yeah, me too. I think we need a ban from here on out of Habs and Sens preseason games. Unfortunately, we have to sit through another one on Saturday, but I think next season onward, they should not schedule these two teams in exhibition matches anymore, because it's just a complete mess and a bloodbath every time. And it seems to get worse every time too. Like, thought for once maybe it would be a normal game, but not even close. So, and yeah, just for the Montreal fans in your audience, just going to clarify that I do not condone the actions of any Senators player in that game yesterday, especially Nick Cousins with that slash. I was expecting him to get suspended. They let him off pretty soft, pretty easy with that one, especially since he got a similar fine in the playoffs just for sliding a puck at Anthony Stolarz in the warm-up. So apparently those two things are like equal value for a fine, which is just ridiculous. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a mess. I hope that it's not so bad on Saturday.
Me too, especially since I'm going to be at that game. I would like to see no deaths. I would like to see no injuries, and I'd like to see some good hockey. So
Hmm.
that's the hope. But we don't know how that's going to shake out. But you brought up playoffs, so I kind of want to talk about how last year we were sitting here, and as a Montreal Canadiens fan, my hope was that they were going to make noise, that they were going to play some meaningful games in the spring. I did not dream. I truly, and I have to be honest, I did not dream that they would actually make the playoffs, right? Whereas for the Ottawa Senators, they had been, climbing and improving. But I think last year was a year where they really had to make the playoffs and kind of show people that they were a force to be reckoned with, right? Would you characterize that as accurate?
Yeah, exactly. Especially with Brady Tkachuk being over halfway into his contract at this point. I think he's got 3 years left at this point. If we hadn't made the playoffs last season and you're getting into the last few years before he needs an extension and we hadn't even become a playoff team yet, that would become like a huge controversy right there of it's like, why would he stay on a team that can't actually get back to the playoffs? So it was huge that they actually managed to do that to potentially keep the core together because also like not just Kachuk, but if they weren't able to pull it off last season and actually solidified themselves as a playoff team, then you'd be questioning everyone in the core, right?
So what would you say really was the difference for them last year? Like what was the difference between last year and the year before? Where I feel like the year before they had a slow start, I think. Then they made some noise and then it sort of faded away. They faded
Hmm.
out of the conversation. What made the difference last year?
Yeah, I think it's the two biggest reasons would be Travis Green's coaching and the impact of Linus Ullmark because they actually had a slow start this season too. Like I think they started 7-6, which was okay, but then they went below 500 with a losing streak, and they had just a terrible month of November, like they always do. That's kind of the meme in the Sens community is November is always just a horrible, horrible month. But then in December, Linus Ullmark comes back from injury, and he helps the team to I think it was like a 6 or 7 game win streak on the road. On the road in Western Canada, where last season they actually didn't win a game in the Western Conference time zones until like the last game that they had. So they were like 0 for 15 or yeah, so it would be like 1 for 16 in the end, I think, on on the road in the West last season. So that elite goaltending coming in from Olmark and the coaching from Travis Green, getting these guys to actually commit to defensive play for once, because it really just was not clicking with any of the previous coaching from DJ Smith to Jacques Martin. So just that big impact. And that was surprising too, because Travis Green isn't the most like proven coach in terms of having a long successful track record in the NHL, just a couple of seasons of playoff contention. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can keep the Sens as a playoff team this year, as opposed to when he was with Vancouver. They had that one really good year and then fell right back down. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll work out better for him this time.
We'll get a little bit more into the outlook for these two teams in our last segment, but in this segment, the final question that I would want to have for you is the way that we kind of saw last year's playoff run for the Montreal Canadiens was playoff school, right? Like they were going to learn lessons that were going to help them into contention. So, if I were to ask you, what was the one big lesson the Sens learned from last year's playoff run? What would you say it was?
I think it would be that the margins of error are razor thin because those first 3 games when they went down 3-0 to Toronto, the first game was a blowout, but like they were getting stupid penalties all game, and that was what put them behind the 8 ball. But those specifically game 2 and 3 that were both overtime losses, just little things. Sometimes it comes down to puck luck, or it comes down to just like one little defensive mistake, even in the neutral zone, that can create the chance going the other way. And then you end up in a 3-0 series hole when it could have even been like a 2-1 series lead. So just I think the experience is going to help them from taking those losses and being able to learn from them and fighting back in the series too. They were able to turn it around and make it close in the end. But yeah, I would just say that playoff hockey can be so close with just those little moments that change the whole game.
And I would say for the Montreal Canadiens, I know everybody talks about toughness, etc. Experience was a big one, like understanding what it really takes to win in a playoff series. But I think the biggest lesson that I would have wanted the Canadiens to learn, which it remains to be seen, I think they're working on it, is you need to be tough, but you need to be tough with a purpose. You can't just bring in guys that are big and physical. They need to be able to play as well, right? So a lot of people made a lot out of that first 10 minutes against the Washington Capitals where they were being hit left and right, but they were able to hang with them after they withstood that, right? So I think it's really a matter of there's a lot of things they had to learn. There was a lot of like lessons that a lot of them had to learn because it was their first playoff appearance ever in their career. So I think I think this year if they both make the playoffs, I'm just hoping that it's not against each other in the first round.
Yeah. Oh my God. Could you imagine?
Just so that there's players left for the second round. That's all.
Yeah, I think that lesson that you mentioned applies to the Sens in that first game there too, because they came out trying to be really physical and almost going for the sort of cheap shots that you sometimes get away with in the playoffs, but the referees were not having any of it and just called everything on them. So they got that lesson like right away in game one and had to smarten up after that. But yeah, if it ended up being Ottawa versus Montreal in the playoffs this year, I feel like every game would be like that, just parade to the penalty box.
I think so. And I think, it might diminish our enjoyment of it, but let's not get the cart before the horse. We're going to talk about the offseason changes that both these teams made and how, how we see them improving the team and what might be missing with those changes. And that's all coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And as always, we want to remind everyone to please bet responsibly. It is so, so important. All right, we are back with the lovely Maude from Game Over Ottawa, and we're going to talk about off-season changes for both teams. So let's start with the subtractions. What did Ottawa lose in the off-season?
Mostly depth pieces. Anton Forsberg, who was formerly kind of the 1A, 1B, depending on who the other goalie was for the last few years for the Sens, he walks in free agency just due to the Sens needing to go with a cheaper backup option. So that'll be a little bit of an interesting thing to watch because Levi Marilainen was a surprise last year coming up and playing great for the Sens. You got to see, though, if he'll be able to continue that this year. You don't really have that veteran fallback option in Forsberg, or if Ullmark is getting injured a lot again, like he did last season. So that's one potential thing where I could see that having an impact on the Sens season. Totally up to Marilainen if he's able to pull the weight as a full-time NHL backup, and potentially more if we have injuries to Ullmark. And then other than that, it was just like losing Travis Hamonic, which is kind of a addition from subtraction kind of thing, addition by subtraction. So it was a pretty quiet offseason overall for the Sens, which I think I'm happy about because with the cap going up soon, the time to spend is going to be later and not now so much. I think a lot of teams are saving their money, saving their potential cap space for when better players are on the market. It was a pretty uneventful like free agency with a lot of players just signing with the team they were already with. So a lot of the guys that I was like, oh, I'd like to see the Sens go after him, they were just re-signing before July 1st even opens. So not a huge amount of subtractions for the Sens.
Was it a certain Florida Panthers center that people wanted to get because that's who everyone in Montreal kept pointing at?
Yeah, I think everybody around the league was just like, yeah, give Sam Bennett $10 million and
Yeah.
then see what happens.
So what about additions? Were there any additions or re-signings that you think will make an impact this season?
So re-signing Claude Giroux was huge. That was kind of the major thing that we were all wondering, whether he would want to return or whether, because it's kind of the thing where the veteran kind of has to take a pay cut as the team gets better, and his performance is still good, but probably declining in terms of how much ice time he'll get just as he ages. So they were able to come to terms and agree on a deal with that. So that was huge. I think that if he walked, then maybe we would have seen the Sens go hard after another winger. But since they were able to keep Giroux, there wasn't too much movement on that front on the forward group. They brought in Lars Eller, which I think it's really weird.
Hurts
He
my
hasn't,
heart.
yeah, he hasn't been a Montreal Canadian for a long time, but I still think of him as one in my head. I think just because those 2013 and 2015 playoff series between the Sens and Habs, he was front and center despite getting injured in the second one.
Yeah.
Played like one period, but he was still a major storyline in that series just because of how that went down. So that's a bit of a weird one to see him in a Sens jersey, but we welcome him for sure. And then the other major addition is Jordan Spence on the blue line, basically the replacement for Hamonic, and he could not be further from Hamonic's play style, which I think is going to be refreshing for a lot of Sens fans to see. Like obviously he doesn't have that physicality, but he's got that puck moving ability and better skating. So that's an element that we really like to see on this blue line, especially with the strength of this blue line being those skating puck movers like Chabot and Sanderson, but they're on the left-hand side. We really didn't have a guy like that on the right-hand side who shoots right. So I think a lot of fans are going to be excited to see him play.
Yeah. And honestly, like I think the Claude Giroux thing was really, really big personally. And I have to say with Lars Eller, I was like, don't you have any memories from that playoff series? And then I thought about it, I
Yeah,
was like, you probably
he
don't. That's
probably
why.
doesn't. They all evaporated.
And that's why he resigned. But that was hard because we also thought that he could be, you know, a depth center for us.
Oh
He
yeah,
could come back home, but I don't think he was ever interested in ever coming back here. On the Montreal side, I think the biggest question mark is penalty kill, right? So the people that they lost, Yoel Armia left, Christian Dvorak left, David Savard retired, and then Emil Heineman was traded in the Noah Dobson trade. So while we got a huge addition with Noah Dobson, I know there were multiple teams chasing him. I know he was a name that the Canadiens have been interested in a very long time. The fact that it actually materialized was a little bit of a surprise. And it gives the Canadiens a lot of options offensively and on the power play. But what's happened is that right now the Canadiens are trying different people in the penalty kill. And we're not 100% sure how it's going to go. So that to me is like the biggest thing. And Demidov, I know he showed up a couple of games before the season was over, but he's still a big addition for this year.
yeah, for sure.
Having him, I think a healthy Patrick Laine and a healthy Kirby Dach are also big additions. And I don't want to discount the importance of Noah Dobson. Like I think that the Canadiens will have a massive improvement in their transition game and their offensive game. There are a lot of guys now that can score. Scoring used to be a huge problem on the Montreal Canadiens. It was like a bunch of guys we liked, but their hands weren't great. And so now we've got a bunch of guys who can score, and somebody's got to get them the puck. So I think for me, like I'm excited about the additions that have been made, but I am a little bit nervous. And you know, there's only been a couple preseason games. There's still a bunch of AHLers still on the lineup, so we're gonna see what happens. And one of the major storylines on that front is, you know, who out of Arbor Xhekaj or Jaden Struble can kill penalties. Because that's the person who has the edge on that last spot on the defense. But I do kind of worry a little bit about depth on that front, like defensive depth in general, because the addition was offensive. It wasn't like Noah Dobson, like his defensive game gets a lot of critiques, I'm going to say. So he's going to be someone to watch, because I think one of the things is that Marty is going to work on him. And we'll see how it goes.
You think they're going to put him right into those defensive roles and just see how it goes, or do you think they'll kind of ease him into that maybe?
I think they'll start from the beginning. If Josh Anderson's like transformation into a penalty killer has anything, it teaches us anything, it's going to be like he's going to be put in those opportunities, in those moments, and be given an opportunity. And I think like just really the biggest question mark of the entire season like the Montreal Canadiens like entire I think future kind of hinges on it is Kirby Dach going to be able to be a viable second line center? And if not, that's a huge hole in the lineup the Canadians are going to have to figure out over the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like the off-season changes. Were there anything else? Like, did you have any questions about the
Well,
Habs?
the one name that I didn't hear mentioned that I wonder about is Zach Bolduc,
Oh yes.
because I think he's been playing wing in the preseason. He's been playing as
Mhm.
a winger, but I believe he is a center as well, right? I wonder if he could potentially be an option for that 2C hole if needed. I'm not
I
sure though.
The Canadians are more likely to put Newhook in there
Okay.
than they love Newhook and they want to make Newhook happen as a center so badly. And I think he to his credit, he's been doing a lot of work. He's been getting better at faceoffs and things like that. But I think having Kirby Dach there and actually be able to play with Line, because there's a chemistry issue there right now as well. Having that work out, I think, will be really, really instrumental this season. And then if he is a viable second line center, even if Line walks in the offseason, because this is the last year of his contract, you can still have him play there. And one thing they did do is they put Bolduc with Dach, and it worked out. So we'll see what happens, right? It feels like anyone you put with Dach works except Line.
Yeah, it's interesting because Patrick Laine is basically automatic on the power play,
Yeah.
but 5-on-5 finding who works with him is a different story, right?
Yeah, and he's really healthy. He's doing well. So I'm expecting a big season from him. He likes it here, so who knows? He might not walk in the off season. All right, let's talk about that. Actually, let's talk about what's going to happen this season, and that's coming up in just one moment. We're back with Maude from Game Over Ottawa. And before we get into our season outlook for these two teams, let's talk a little bit about Game Over Ottawa. It is coming back this season.
Yes, we are back in a slightly different format this season. Hoping to do potentially a full relaunch on January 1st. But up until then, we're hoping to do weekly recaps, sort of. Thinking Sunday episodes, because usually there's not Sunday games and you almost always have a Saturday night game. So figured that's a good time to do it. So a little bit of a different format. Looking forward to being back though. It'll be not the live shows pre-recorded format this time, just as we settle back into the new season, but excited for sure.
And so in January, if it goes according to plan, will it go back to that live post game format?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, because I think it's really fun to kind of have the fans interact at the same time.
It is. When you have the chat going, those are the best streams.
Because I mean, we know from our wonderful Kay Imam of Game Over Montreal, we have a really good time with her. And a lot of times, like when we're on that show, we come off and we think sometimes we should do live shows after games.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't work out though a lot of the time. So we try to maybe have themed live shows, after the draft or after the lottery and things like that.
And since you mentioned Game Over Montreal, just I'll specify that Game Over Montreal is coming back in the normal format. So they will have their live post-game shows after every game, straight from the beginning of the regular season.
And we'll see you guys all in the comment section there. All right, let's talk about the season outlook for both of these teams. Like if you were to say, if everything hits and everything works out, where do you see the Ottawa Senators at the end of the season?
If I had to predict, I would say maybe third in the division, a little bit of a move up from last year because I believe it was the Panthers only had one more point than the Sens by the end of it. They kind of slowed down at the end of the regular season, and it almost looked like, oh, we might be able to finish ahead of them, which would have been crazy. Didn't quite work out that way, but then you look at them this season without Barkov for the whole year and without Matthew Tkachuk for the first half of the year. You wonder maybe we could get ahead. It was close in the regular season between the two teams last year, and then Toronto, they beat us in the playoffs. But without Marner, I don't really think that they improved with the departure of Marner. They didn't exactly, I don't think, spent that cap space in a way that makes them a better team without him. Tampa Bay is pretty good, but getting older, I would say Tampa Bay definitely ahead of Ottawa. Toronto, Florida, Ottawa, kind of all in the same tier, I think. And then Montreal coming up right behind. Like, I would be surprised if Montreal doesn't make the playoffs. I think Ottawa hopefully stays just ahead. To be honest, it would be kind of embarrassing if the Habs did pass Ottawa, just because we were supposed to be good sooner, and obviously that didn't happen. Both teams making the playoffs at the same time, but yeah, hoping that the Sens can get one of those divisional playoff spots this year.
Yeah. And I think the Montreal Canadiens is kind of the same thing. You have to think about this division. They've sent 5 teams to the playoffs last year. It's a
Hmm.
very strong division, and I don't know that there's a whole lot going on in the Metro other than the Flyers being better than expected. I don't know that like we can predict how they're going to go. So like Montreal absolutely has to be top 4 in this division. Like you can't guarantee getting that other, the freebie
Yeah,
from another division.
I would say though that I think it'll be 5 Atlantic teams again. Like the 5 that I listed, maybe shuffle the order from last season. Just because I don't really think, like you said, any of the Metro teams made like huge moves or huge strides. Like maybe the Rangers bounce back and get back in because they were the surprise miss of last
Yeah,
year in the Metro. So
yeah.
there is that to consider as well.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I feel like Philadelphia is going to be much better than last year, but maybe miss the playoffs still, right? Like the Islanders are going to be really fun. They made a lot of fun moves, right? They got the number 1 overall pick. We're excited about that. They got some good players from other teams. So I really do think that even though they're in full rebuild mode, they're going to be fun to watch. But again, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, right? The Rangers, I'm actually expecting to implode. And
Yeah.
I, the moves that they made don't convince me that that's going to be a winning formula, right? They get a player that's involved in like rumors of a toxic dressing room, and then not only do they actively trade for that player, they also make that player the captain, right?
Yeah. Craziness.
Like a team that thinks like that, I have a lot of question marks about,
For
right?
sure.
And that's something that I actually did want to ask you because one of the strong things about Montreal, it's and people keep talking about it. It's in the rebuild, that reality show that's behind the scenes. Marty talks about it. The players talk about it. They all just really like playing with each other and playing for each other. They spent all summer skating together, right? And they have that like really tight knit group. And so I'm always hesitant to add in a player that might not be that kind of person, right? Like not be that team kind of guy. So what's it like in Ottawa? Like I feel like they also have a little bit of a dynamic there.
Yeah. I'd say they have a similar dynamic in terms of the core, for the most part, has been together for a few years now. Like the most recent member of the core to, I would say, to join the team is Jake Sanderson, and he's played 2 or 3 seasons now. So that's already he's already well established with his teammates. The interesting thing to me though that really surprised me last season was the trade deadline trade to move out Josh Norris, who was Brady Tkachuk's best friend since before they were even on the Sens together, before the Sens had even acquired either of them. So they made that bold move to disrupt the core in the middle of a playoff push and swap him out for Dylan Cousins, and it worked. Dylan Cousins played great down the stretch to get us into the playoffs. So it's interesting because I do think they have that tight knit group, but also the GM saw fit to break it up a little bit and thought, I guess, that he didn't want to keep it exactly the same and didn't want to remain complacent with that either. So I think that's pretty interesting how that played out.
I think I was surprised too. I think I was more caught up in the annoyance that Ottawa got Dylan Cousins. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't think about that factor, but they do seem to have fun. I think that's the thing. Like
Hmm.
when they play together, they look like they have fun. And that's something that Marty always says is like a formula for success, right? Like I want to get him have fun playing hockey again. Like that's how he fixed Cole Caulfield's game. He like, reminded him. And then Patrick Laine always says that, right? Like he worked so hard on his mental health so that he would enjoy playing hockey again. And so it feels like when you watch the Ottawa Senators, yes, they do enjoy beating up the Montreal Canadiens or trying to, but they also like playing together. So I
Hmm.
think,
And I think having fun playing hockey again, that definitely applies to Dylan Cousins after leaving Buffalo, right?
oh
It's just a wasteland. Everybody like starts to hate playing hockey when they're there, and then they leave, and then they do great. So
yeah. We don't know what it is about Buffalo. Like we keep talking about them. We always talk about them, and then it's always like, why is it such a black hole for hockey talent? Um,
it's weird too because it feels like usually their star players still perform, and the
yeah.
team still loses. So it's a weird one.
Yeah, something that my co-host pointed out. We were at a game in Buffalo, like a Habs game in Buffalo, this past season, and I can't remember what it was. There was a scrum or some shenanigan, and no Buffalo Sabres came to each other's defense, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
we'd seen that a couple of years ago when the Montreal Canadiens were imploding and going from like the Stanley Cup final to being last in the league. We'd seen a lot of stuff like that. So I think like there's something about it. Like they don't enjoy playing hockey. They don't play for each other. They don't act like a team. And I know like intangibles, like people always talk about how like there's too much emphasis put on that. But I just find that like these are old school people. This is an old school sport and their mentality is like that. And so if you're not playing for each other, like there's something off there.
And I think Brady Tkachuk's leadership is huge for that, for the Sens, because he's involved in every scrum. It's not just like leadership off the ice and in the locker room, but on the ice too. He's always sticking up for his teammates in there. And like there was that mess of a preseason game. If he was in the lineup, he would have been all over it.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
reason why he wasn't in the lineup in that game too. So Kachuk leads by example in that regard, like never taking a game off, even when it's a bad game. If they're getting blown out, he's still showing his heart out there and getting involved in all the scrums and stuff. So
Yeah.
leads by example for sure.
I think what's interesting is that I wouldn't consider Nick Suzuki to be a kind of person who does get involved in every scrum. But I would say that he's not soft in any way. Like he's still like he's gonna get in your face a little bit, right? Like he's gonna talk. If you touch his player, you're gonna get a talking to. You're not gonna get an Arbor Xhekaj kind of talking to. You're gonna get a Nick Suzuki kind of talking
Yeah,
to.
yeah, not talking with the fists, just actual talking.
Just
He,
actual talking.
from an outsider perspective, his demeanor kind of reminds me of like Patrice Bergeron, sort of more like a quiet leader, but you know he's tough. You still respect him like that, you
Yeah.
know?
He commands respect, and I love that because he's so young, like and he's the youngest captain in Montreal Canadiens history, but he's also like just generally he's a young captain, right? So
hmm
there's something about how they all respect him and look up to him, even though he's not excitable. He's intense in his on ice play, but his regular demeanor is not overly intense. And so I think, there's something special about a player like that that commands respect without having to be in your face. And there's nothing wrong with the way Brady Tkachuk does it, which is loud, right? Like he commands people's respect and he's like he's very intense about how much he stands up for his players,
hmm
right? But yeah. Oh my God, we're running out of time.
Ah,
So real quick, my listeners, please make sure you send mailbag questions because we don't know if Ian's going to be able to make tomorrow's show. So please send lots and lots and lots of mailbag questions, and it can't all be like why do we have to play Ottawa? We've already talked about this for our Friday episode, and also trivia will be back tomorrow. Ian told me the answer to the question, and I forgot it. So I
oh
have to
no.
yes. So I have to redo trivia tomorrow. I promise you, if Ian is not there tomorrow, I will still bring back trivia with the answer to the last question. Oh wait, no, I know now. I remember it.
Oh,
I
you got
remember
it?
it. I remember it. Yes, and I have two listeners who got it right. So the question was, in Kirby Doc's first season, uh, as a Chicago Blackhawk. So his first NHL season as a Chicago Blackhawk, he was teammates with a player who was the brother of another former Montreal Canadian, and the answer was Malcolm Subban. So Kirby Dach, when he was on the Chicago Blackhawks, Malcolm Subban played one game with
One game. Oh, that's
one
a tough
game
one.
with the Chicago Blackhawks. But I had two listeners who got the answer right, and I'm just pulling them up right now. Apologies, I did write this down, and then I left my notebook in my dining room. So we got two questions. Obviously, Super Rain, one of our perennial trivia superstars, and David Waddy got the answer right. So tomorrow I will bring back just a question for tomorrow's trivia. Congratulations. So real quick, once again, where can people find you and your work, Maude?
Yes, so I'm still on Twitter, but mostly on Blue Sky, more active on there these days. Got the tag in there it is on the screen there. And Game Over Ottawa on YouTube. If you can handle watching Ottawa fans' opinions, if you can stomach that as a Habs fan. But also want to plug Game Over Montreal for sure, because I know that your viewers will enjoy that if they're not subscribed already, and that show will be back in full force this season.
which we're very, very excited about. And as for us, you can find us all over social media at Locked On Canadiens, wherever we're posting. So Locked On Canadiens on Instagram, Locked On Canadiens on TikTok, Locked On Canadiens on Blue Sky, and you can email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can also leave comments on YouTube. Please send mailbag questions on all of these formats. So we'll have a great mailbag episode. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll see you all tomorrow.